Hi everyone, this is Taryn with Wonderfully Made Handcrafting. It's been a couple weeks since I've done a voiceover of a crafting video, and I'm really excited to get back into it. I was up in New Hampshire visiting family, and so I thought this would be the perfect time to show you how I created the tag that I posted on Instagram a couple days ago. So this tag was used using By the Well for God's newest kit, A Glimpse of Heaven, a bunch of the stamps that came with that. And so I really like this look of a distressed mixed media kind of tag. So I start off just by layering some distress oxides and some distress spray stains down on the tag. And I'm just laying them down and then kind of picking them up with the tag itself. And then I dry between each layer so that the layers actually will layer up, not just kind of get into this like muddy mess. Now this is obviously just going to be a background, so you won't see it too much, but I want to make sure that the color is even on this tag. I want to make sure that everything is kind of covered up. And then I'm going to take out my Stamparatus stamp positioning tool from Stampin' Up. Now this tool is really cool because you can do one of those multiple layer stamp sets with it, because it actually has two of those plastic kind of discs that flip over, and you can use both sides because they pop off. So very cool tool. I need to use it more often, but I'm just taking this A Glimpse of Heaven stamp set that actually came in the kit. I thought this was a great stamp set. I've been actually waiting to do this tag for a while since I was visiting my parents in New Hampshire, so I didn't have all the tools I needed to do this. So I just waited until I could come home and stamp this out. I did kind of dust some of that powder on it before because I am going to emboss it. I really like when I'm making tags to heat emboss the stamps because it just makes it show better and clear. And also when I use some distress oxides to watercolor later, it's going to keep the colors kind of in their own separate areas where they're supposed to be and not bleed out too much. I did just grab a baby wipe and wipe this off some. I probably could use some of that StazOn remover or archival ink remover on this to clean it up a little better, but it's good enough for me right now. I also grabbed a little piece of acetate that I had saved some packaging. So always save your packaging because it's not trash usually. You can usually reuse it, especially with mixed media stuff. And I am stamping one of those Heaven's Flight moths on it. And I am so excited how this turned out. Now this was inspired by Mindy, and she had alcohol inked one of the back of a previous butterfly she had gotten from a different kit. And so I decided I was going to stamp this out. I used StazOn ink, so it wouldn't smear off, and because it's really slippery, so that StazOn ink helps a lot with that. And then I am using alcohol ink on the back side of this moth. Now this was the first time I've ever tried doing something like this, so it was kind of a learning experience. So you'll see kind of the ink flows very well, obviously, on this acetate. It kind of stayed in the butterfly for the most part, but then I decided I kind of wanted to get it on the outer edges of the butterfly, because when I cut it out, I didn't want to have I just wanted the color to continue. And so I kind of get messy here and get it outside of the lines. And I want it to be a little bit more yellow than brown. So I kept on going back and forth and kind of picking some of those colors up. But in the end, I really, really enjoy how this turned out. And I'm going to just cut it out, and then I will add this to my tag as well. A couple weeks ago, I decided to pick up Archer and Olive's white acrylic pen set from By the Well for God, and this is the first time I'm using it. I'm adding a little bit of white dots to the outside of this moth's wings, and I really like how it ended up turning out. It adds a lot of contrast to this moth, and I'll end up putting a staple through that moth on the side of my tag after I finish the rest of this. So I am grabbing some distress oxides and smushing them down onto a mat and using them to watercolor. This is actually the number one way I use my distress oxides. I often don't stamp with them. I love my VersaFine ink. Basically, it gives such clear prints from the stamps that it's hard for me to kind of stray away from that. So my Distress Oxides I use for the most part for mixed media stuff and watercoloring, which is really fun. Eventually I might invest in the re-inkers because I've seen those are a lot more vibrant, so we'll see in the future. But this tag, I wanted to keep the color scheme kind of vintage, rustic, and antique. And so this is definitely going to stray far away from the colors of the kit, but I think that's really fun to do. Sometimes it's fun to take something that came from a kit and just change the look of it completely, because this is what it's doing. It's completely changing the look of the kit while still using all the kit stuff, which is fun for me. So I am coloring that all in. I'm keeping with the tones of the browns and the kind of mossy greens. And then I will add a little bit of more contrast with some of this tea dye. So this is going to be a different kind of brown, and I am just adding that in. That is another brown that I used on the background, so it's not going to be too stark of a difference, but it will add some of that contrast with the coloring. Now, if you're looking for some water brushes, these are some Arteza water brushes, and I actually really like them. I purchased them a while back, but haven't used them too often until recently. And I really like how they have a little water flow button on the side, so that's very helpful. Now I am going to add a little bit of more texture to the background. I'm using this stencil and then some texture paste, and then I'm going to add some vintage photo distress glaze to the top. This is the first time I'm adding distress glaze to the top of texture paste, and it kind of gives it this bubbly, shiny look once you heat it up. Now I'm going to heat this up with my embossing gun, but just remember, when you heat emboss, texture paste is definitely going to bubble and pop. So if you don't like the look, then this probably isn't for you. But I kind of like that look, and I try not to do the heat so harsh in one spot, so I continually move my embossing gun around so it doesn't get too crazy, but it gives this beautiful texture to the tag. Now I can't do anything crafty without adding some fabric to it. And so I grabbed my favorite fabric. This is this beautiful herringbone kind of rust color, and I am almost out. I need to find some more, but I am using my trusty tiny attacher to create these folds instead of my sewing machine. Sometimes if it's something small like this, I just grab my tiny attacher and I'm making it into a semicircle because I find that it is giving it a different shape, because there's so much linear on this that I want to add a different kind of circle curve. And I am going to put that down with some Fabri-Tac glue, and then I'll end up putting my moth on this tag in this little corner with a tiny attacher as well. I grabbed this ruler ribbon that I got from Hobby Lobby, but when I put it up to the tag, it looked too clean, and so I ended up just dusting it with some Distress Oxide to give it more of an antique feel, and it really fits in now with the tag. I ended up finding 3 little brads on an old project at my mom's house, and so I decided to deconstruct that project I had done and added these little brads to the bottom right hand corner of this tag. It adds something fun to the bottom of the tag, something to draw your eye down, and I really like the metallic look of them. I wanted to add a little bit more chunk to this tag, and so I grabbed my Tim Holtz Ideology factory tags that I picked up a couple days ago at Hobby Lobby. And I don't want them to be too shiny because that would totally negate the look of this tag. And so I grab some kind of grungy, I think I used oregano alcohol ink, and I ended up adding that to the metal, and it becomes this antique kind of tarnished look to this metal, and I love it so much. So I'm definitely going to do this with the other metallic tags I have, or metal tags. And I ended up gluing that down with some glossy accents because I know that stays really well. Now I probably would have glued it down later if I would have thought, because it doesn't dry super fast, and so I ended up moving it and having to glue it again. But I grabbed my ticket booth stamp set now, and I'm just adding something to add a little bit more layering to this tag. I'm going to put this behind. This is the ticket booth stamp set and die set from Tim Holtz. I'm using the paper that came with the kit. Now this is that yellow lined paper, and what I'm doing is cutting that out with my Big Shot, and then I'm going to distress this again because I don't want it to look too yellow. So I grab some brown and I'm gonna heavily distress this. You can still see the lines kind of popping through the paper at the end, but it doesn't look like yellow lined paper by the end of this. And I am adding a little bit more definition to the edge of this tag because they looked very similar in color, so I wanted it to be defined more. And I also decided to grab some foam because that's gonna make some height difference so it doesn't look like one solid piece. To complete this tag, I'll end up adding a floral embellishment to the bottom right hand corner and a greenery piece behind it as well that is also made out of fabric. Now this will end up going into my Bible as a Bible journaling page. I will end up posting that on Instagram once it's completed, and it'll be for day 11, I believe, of A Glimpse of Heaven. If you've enjoyed watching this process, please like and subscribe to my channel, and go ahead and follow me over on Instagram at Wonderfully Made Handcrafting. I hope you have a wonderful day, guys. God bless.